Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on clean public transport, the first in our new e-mobility series brought to you by the Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform. My name is Katharina Krell. I'm a thematic expert for low carbon economy with the Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform, and I'm going to be your main moderator for this afternoon. I have the pleasure of having a co-moderator today, Sava Kisser, from the Regional Development Agency Center from Romania. Hello, Sava. Good to have you.
Nice to see you all.
I would also like to introduce my colleagues, Simon Hunkin, thematic expert like myself, and Lotte van Meil, our web expert responsible for the technology that brings us together. So we are on a new platform. At least the low carbon team has used this platform for the first time now. We dropped GoToMeeting. We are on Zoom. So a few words about the rules of engagement. As usually, we are recording our webinar, and the recordings as well as everybody's presentations are going to be available shortly afterwards online for everybody. The audience can interact. You can see the chat and you can see a Q&A. We recommend that you only use the chat so that we do not need to look for your input in two channels. Just use the chat to ask us your questions. And there's also the possibility to raise your hand. And then we can give you the floor and you can ask your question directly to our presenters. So don't be shy to make use of these new interaction functions. Let's try quickly the new polling function. And let's check at the same time how well you know the policy learning platform, because we have seen many familiar names in the registration list. So let's see if you need more explanations on the policy learning platform or not. So a majority of yes. How many people do we have? About 50 so far. That's not yet a full house. Okay, well, 2/3, but I believe we can be very quick on the services of the Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform. The Policy Learning Platform is the second pillar of the Interreg Europe program and is dedicated to interregional knowledge sharing beyond the sharing that is happening inside of the individual consortia. And we do this along 4 thematic areas. Ours is low carbon economy that is covering energy and mobility. And Simon and myself are in charge of organizing the knowledge sharing for the low carbon economy projects. And we have 4 services to this end, and the knowledge sharing inside of webinars, as we have this afternoon, is one of the main features. And next time I will explain you more about the other services. Okay, so we're talking about e-mobility. And e-mobility is, of course, a very hot topic inside of mobility. And it's a topic that is picking up speed more and more. In the first 2 Interreg Europe calls of the past programming period, we only had 2 projects on this topic. And however, the 4th call produced 5 new topics on electrification of transport. And this means that we have an impressive cluster of 7 projects that are working on one or another topic related to electrification of transport. Now, this fact inspired us to gather these projects last May to identify areas of common interest and knowledge together with the coordinators and the consortia. And the result is this webinar series on e-mobility. And the agendas have been co-created together with the project consortia, and we have jointly settled on 3 focus areas. So we're going to have a webinar trilogy. The first one today is focusing on clean public transport. Next week, always Tuesday afternoons, we will talk about charging infrastructure. And the third webinar will be on the integration of e-mobility into territorial planning and the link to other policies. So we hope that you're staying with us through the trilogy. But today, let's talk about clean public transport. And this is mainly about electric buses in our case. Before I present you the agenda, I would like to hear a little bit from you in a short poll where you are standing in terms of transport electrification related to e-buses. So please tell us, has your city already introduced e-buses? So yes, we have the first buses, or yes, we already have an entire fleet. No, but it's planned, or no, I don't even know that it's planned. Let's see a little bit where you're standing. Okay, first buses running. So most have already started. Few have already entire fleets. 15% plan it in the next 2 years, and 20% don't know of any such plans. Okay, thank you very much. So let's take a look at our agenda, and I would like to ask all the speakers to turn on the camera so that I can introduce you. It's our pleasure to have a keynote from Jeroen Golstein from the Province of Utrecht. He's a partner in the eBussed projects, and he's going to tell us about procurement and rollout of electric buses. Hello, Jeroen. Then we are going to have a contribution from Aleksi Heinonen from the Turku University of Applied Science. Aleksi is the coordinator of the eBussed project, and he's going to present us the eBus Readiness Indicator tool to see if your city is ready for the introduction of electric buses. And then my co-moderator, Sarah Kisser, is going to present us some good practices from Brasov on the upgrading of the pre-existing trolleybus system and the introduction of new electric buses to make the city entirely carbon-free in the medium term. Then we will have a panel discussion. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Jeroen for your keynote. The floor is yours. Everybody else can switch off the camera. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, and welcome everybody. My name is Jeroen Golstein. I'm working for the Province of Utrecht, and I'm also involved in the eBussed project. You can see an overview of our of my presentation. I will tell something about the Province of Utrecht. We also have, as most of the regions I saw in the poll. We also have some electric buses running, and we're working on that together in the eBussed project with other regions, and most of them have them running, but we don't have a complete fleet, and I will tell you something about it, and we will share you some recommendations from the eBussed project. Where may I have the next one? Well, this the Province of Utrecht. It's in the Netherlands. It's in the middle of the Netherlands. We are 1.3 million inhabitants, and we are quite very dense populated. We have some national landscapes, but most, of course, most people live in the both cities. Amsterdam, near Amsterdam, we have Utrecht and Amersfoort, and we are very proud of our landscape, so we try to develop the cities and also make them more livable. And we have also a very, because of the situation, the position in the Netherlands, we're in the middle. We have a lot of traffic, not only through our province, but also from the province to other regions. For example, we have the biggest train station in the Netherlands. May I have the other slide, please? Well, our challenges we are now facing, well, are not unique for our region, but for most of the region, we see growing of population in the urban areas. and to facilitate those new houses, but also create livable cities for the new people, but also for the current residents. Yeah, we have accepted and try to implement a healthy urban living concept, and also have to make a transition in carbon-free energy, and of course to shift to more sustainable mobility. Biking is of course very popular in the Netherlands, but also to more walking and public transport, and also needs to make the transition to zero emission vehicles. The next step, please. Well, our target, we aimed at the Province of Utrecht to have in 2028 100% zero emission public transport. At this moment, we have 520 buses running. So that means that we also have in 2028 520 zero emission buses running. We made some steps so far. At this moment, we have 76 e-buses running, and we do it in the small steps, and we are scaling up. But from 2025 to 2028, there will be a new tender with a new concession, and then we have to scale up with 420 new buses. Here you see our mapping of the value chain. We did it in eBussed, not only for our region, but for all the regional partners. And there you can see we are, as a Province of Utrecht, we are the concession provider. So we pay our private company Qbus for the transport service, and they also are buying and owning the buses and also the charging infrastructure. There are not public transport operators, or not publicly owned. In other regions, that's different. Sometimes also the public authority buys the buses, and then the private company is running them. So there are still some changes in the Netherlands. Most of the time I work with private companies. But one thing we are also doing is that in this case, the new buses are owned by the Qbus, but if they leave this concession because they don't win the next tender, then the buses stay here in the concession and are taken over by a new public public transport company. I have the next one. What we of course have learned, and what we is that the charging infrastructure and the depots are very essential for the bus operations. Well, there normally are, but with eBuses there are even more. And also with the bigger eBus upscaling, we also see that charging on depots is even more challenging. So we are looking at this moment, as a public authority to build and also to own our own depots, because then we have a better level playing field for all the private companies in the next tender, and we also can work on the challenges like the eBus capacity we also need for the network, and all the energy storage and the peak shaving. And what we have learned, there's also many issues about safety and space and cost. So we take them more to ourselves and not to the private market. Next, please. What we also have learned in the difficulties we have found so far is that especially in the early years, there was also an early technique, and there were a lot of innovations. So that that sometimes gives technical limitations, and also it sometimes there were failures or some issues about the buses, and we have to deal with them. Another thing which is very challenging is the weather conditions. In the bus opens the doors, and there's a lot of boarding of passengers, and that also brings in a lot of cold in very freezing circumstances. If the weather is not good, then you lost a lot of energy, and that is in the public transport market pretty big. For an example, in a cold day, then up to 30% of our energy consumption is needed for the heating. Well, we also have faced that you have longer implementation phases, and sometimes, especially when with the early techniques and with when things not always go very smoothly, then you also have to make sure you have the commitment of the staff and also management and the politicians involved. Next, please. What recommendations we can give finally? Well, first of all, at this moment, it's very it's very good to remember that at this moment, eBussed technology has grown up, and for that also makes it very more easy to implement at this moment. Not a lot of bus manufacturers are offering buses, all different types, and the costs are not that high as it was before. So sometimes there are no additional costs involved, and it gives very clear benefits to your region, especially for the users. Sometimes not only the bus drivers, but also passengers and the environment and people around the bus who are living next to bus routes. They can be happier. And how do you do that? Well, first of all, we think it's very good to make a strategic plan. In the Netherlands, we have a national agreement to have all the buses in the Netherlands in 2030 zero emission. And we made that goal in 2016. So it was a long-term goal, but it gives you a clear points for all your actions. And always look for opportunities you can see, and very good to learn from each other. We have in the Netherlands, but also in other partner nations like in Germany, companies or public transport authorities work together on information sharing platforms. And another thing is international projects. Of course, one of them is the eBussed project, where you can find more information. And the next one, I want to thank you for your attention, and I hope you have learned a lot about this.
Thank you, Jeroen. Audience, you can use the chat if you have questions to Jeroen. Clearly, Utrecht is amongst the forerunners when it comes to sustainable mobility. I mean, we look for you, not only for advice on cycling, but you also have good experience to share here. We wanted to ask you a little bit about the total cost of ownership. You mentioned that they're not more expensive than traditional. Can you elaborate a little bit how the total cost of ownership compares to diesel buses, for instance?
We see a lot of good development in that additional costs have gone down. When we in 2017 bought 11 electric buses, then there were about 5 million electric, 5 million extra additional costs involved for only 11 buses. And in 2019, we did it again, and then we can buy 55 buses for the same amount extra. So that was very good. But what we are now seeing is much more companies are involved in and offers a new electric buses. So that makes it for some business cases, it makes it more equal to fuel buses, but also for very long distance. And we also have 24-meter buses. They are not at the same level. And one thing you have to remember, and I said it in my presentation about the depot. So if you have invested in that, then it makes it more easily than when you also have to do that additional investments.
One of our listeners would like to know if all the buses were procured from the same company.
No, we have several buses in our region. We have, I believe, at this moment, 4 or 5 companies involved. Earlier, that's a French company, but also some Dutch, Chinese. Several.
Okay, my co-moderator Sava, do you have a question for Jeroen?
Hello. Regarding the maintenance and about the training of the staff, I've noticed that you mentioned that the eBussed drivers are more happy. Tell about the training of the mechanics and the drivers. What makes them happy, drivers, having an electric bus on the wheels beneath him?
Well, what makes them happy, if it all runs very, very well, then the bus, of course, quieter. It's making a lot of there are a lot of less vibrations, so that's good. And most of the time, the staff, the drivers, the mechanics, they like to work with new innovations and new buses. So that makes them happier normally. But what's very important is that they are also motivated to work with new innovations. But that also means that sometimes things just in the beginning not always go very well. So then it's important to share those expectations, but also to give to need their feedback from them, and also bring them, give that a follow up, and then you can really have to motivate them if they see that there are really improvements there. And when the first 3 electric buses in 2013 were introduced, all the bus drivers sometimes were running with that buses, but there was not a very short connection between bus drivers and the mechanics, and that didn't work out. And for the last buses, our public transport company make a very only work with a small bus driver selection who are very more involved, and that motivates them very well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Simon, do we have somebody from the audience who is audacious enough to take the floor?
Well, we had a hand raised by Martin, but he put it down and typed his question. But Martin, if you would like to take the floor, I can unmute you and you should be able to ask your question. Okay, it says he has permission to speak, but I'm not hearing anything. Martin? No, okay, technical problem. Okay, so Martin has written, Jeroen, procuring a contract is based on the best value for money and the extent to which the PTO can fulfill the procurement requirement. Can you tell something more about what type of requirements are put in the contract?
Sometimes we make the procurement more special about the operation for a line. So most of the time when you buy diesel buses, then it can be more you don't really have to look in what type of area they operate because a diesel bus can ride everywhere, I would say, and also with things like the heating, as I said, or the cooling. That's not a real issue with a diesel bus. That is for those specifications, you make it more tailor-made for just for one line, or if you do it for a more general bus fleet, then you need more battery capacity. So that's more challenging with electric buses.
Okay, thank you. We had one more question come in the chat from Gonzalo, who's based in Granada in the southeast of Spain. He's saying, we have a common general difference of temperature in a day of around 20 degrees. Our transport company tell us they found no eBus company that guarantees batteries with such daily changes. Do you know of any companies with which they could speak?
No, I'm not a really technical advisor for the bus companies, but we have in our project also colleagues from the Malta and Italian regions. That's also because they're the temperature and the challenges there are more very different than in Turkey, Turku in Finland, and here in the Netherlands. But in Italy there are driving some buses as well, but I don't know exactly what they have for battery capacity and how they do the cooling. And sometimes cooling is also or heating is separately done, and that also gives some benefits in operations.
Okay,
but it's not always zero emission, to be honest.
Okay, well, perhaps we can put Gonzalo in contact with your colleagues in Italy and Malta to follow up.
Yes, or maybe there are some participants from these areas who would like to respond to Gonzalo. Just use the chat as a parallel knowledge exchange, but I do not want to divert your attention from our next presentation. And let's move on to hear from Alexi now from the eBussed project about his readiness indicator tool. Alexi, the floor is yours. Everybody else can switch off camera. Thanks.
Thank you. Share my screen.
All good.
Excellent. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alexi Heinonen, the project manager of eBussed, and I was given the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the eBussed Readiness Indicator, a tool that we have developed in our project. So eBussed focuses on supporting regions on the transition to electric buses and low carbon public transport. And this tool was developed as part of the work done in one of our thematic working groups, which focuses on drivers and barriers of that transition. The objective of this work was to develop an easy-to-use tool that different stakeholders could use for assessing their region's readiness for eBus introduction or fleet expansion. And as a result, we got an Excel-based survey type of tool, which is available on the eBussed website for anyone to test out. I believe that the link has been provided to you in the chat. There's a small documentation file to get you started. So naturally, this work was started by defining the readiness indicators. And this was done by analyzing the various success factors of e-mobility. And in the end, we ended up with 42 readiness indicators. And after we had the readiness indicators identified and listed, we moved to categorizing them. And for this, we were able to utilize evaluation on drivers and barriers that was done earlier by the working group. There was a quite thorough literature review done and some field studies. Of course, a lot of discussions within the working group. And then in the end, 5 categories were selected. So the readiness indicators were categorized in these. First one being government policies and investment. And second one, charging infrastructure, construction and operation, / energy production and distribution. Third one is business models and maintenance service system. Fourth one, consumer and other awareness education. And the fifth one is operation scope and environmental benefits and any other features. Of course, we understand that regions and their operational context can be very, very different from each other, and not all of these indicators are relevant in every region, but that's not a problem since they can be left blank and disregarded when using the tool. So the tool was developed based on the indicators and categories defined. And as we all understand, the readiness cannot really be defined simply as yes, ready, or no, not ready. But it's more like a development in stages. So we decided to utilize this so-called traffic light model for the indicators. And in this model, just like in traffic lights, there are 3 lights, red indicating that no, not ready at all, and yellow indicating that getting ready, something is being done or happening, and green is ready, that this indicator is already addressed. And as a result, we got easy to use responsive Excel sheet where user inputs the status of each indicator and actors or stakeholders involved. And when something is indicated being ready or getting ready, there needs to be some details for justifying that. So some kind of proof that something is being done. And now let's take a look at the tool itself. As you can see, this is a partial cutout since not all 42 indicators can fit in one slide. So here we have these indicators, each on its own line. And on the left, we have the main categories. And then there are also other parameters like parameters based on this maturity model or drivers and barriers related to this indicator, and then description of that indicator. And fields meant for user input are marked with different color. So it's easy to use. So for each indicator, user will input the actors involved and select the status from those 3 options: ready, getting ready, not ready. and then the details when needed. And after it has been filled in, then the traffic light symbols will appear next to the status column. And it will also be possible to easily filter the result with those buttons on the top. And what does this tool look like when it's filled in? So here is one example filled in by one of our partners. So as you can see, the user has provided input for the status and for the actors involved, and also additional details. And in this case, even details for not ready indicators where it is not a requirement. And here you can see the traffic light symbols indicating the readiness level. And from here, it's easy for the user to continue based on these results with further analysis on risks and opportunities. And during the development of the tool, it was tested in 3 different regions to finalize the layout of the tool and the functionalities. So it was tested in Livorno, Italy, South Transdanubia in Hungary, and Utrecht in the Netherlands. And in this table, there are those results compiled, so you can quite easily see which are the main focus points of each main category for different regions and where the readiness is in place. And to wrap up, the 4 main benefits provided by this tool. So first of all, it is easy to use and it is suitable for different stakeholders. Second, it allows fast assessment of the region's readiness level. Third, existing readiness and development targets can be easily identified. And last, it can also be used periodically to document the prevailing conditions and the improvements from the actions taken. So it can be used sort of a monitoring tool as well. That was all. Thanks for your time. If you're interested to learn more, there's a thematic article written about this tool. So it's also available on our website. And I'm happy to answer your questions. And you're also welcome to contact me or thematic working group leader Ivo Tartaglia afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexi. The tool is brand new. You have just only published it, is it right?
Yes.
So is it already ready enough for use by other cities, or are you still in the testing phase?
It's ready enough. Of course, we are very happy to receive feedback on how it works in other regions. But yeah.
I think it's very interesting because, I mean, we have seen in our poll upfront that, well, not all cities are already, let's say, very advanced in the rollout of eBussed. So maybe all those that are still at the beginning are interested in testing. Can you say what kind of profile the people have to be able to fill this in properly? Do you need any technical expertise, or is it a team effort? Can you elaborate a little bit on that, please?
Yes. Yeah, it's a team effort, and most of all, there needs to be understanding on the regional context. So ideally, there would be a small group of stakeholders from like a representative of managing authority, public transport operator, energy company, a small group of something like that. But no special expertise is needed.
Maybe this is also not only to check the readiness, but it's also a very good thing to bring together the different people involved in planning and rollout, and it helps to not forget any of the important topics. Maybe this is also an additional benefit, not just to indicate where you're standing, but to make sure that you see the whole picture, because e-buses are not just like buses, but they have a whole system, a whole infrastructure and embedded system that they need to be in.
You're correct. Yeah, it's just like that.
Sava, do you have questions to Alexi?
Yes, I saw something in the presentation regarding the readiness of the South Hungary and Utrecht with red, green, yellow lights. It wasn't crystal clear for me. At first glance, it looked like the South Hungary should be more prepared for e-buses than Utrecht, and Utrecht is looking for 500 e-buses more than Hungary and maybe Austria together. But this is a personal opinion. It's an easy tool to interpret. So after you get the results, it's easy to understand the results, or you need an expert to do this kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. So while regional context needs to be understood when filling the tool, and we need several stakeholders to do the team effort, the interpreting doesn't need to be done with such a team. So the results should be quite clear after they have been filled in by the team. And of course, the results are a result of that teamwork. So how they fill in, so it needs to be done in detail and well, that it is easy to understand. But did that answer your question? Yeah. So once the results are there, then it should be easy to understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have another question, Sava?
Nope.
Okay. We'll see. Maybe we can see if we can launch a spontaneous poll to the audience to see if somebody wants to use this. Yes, no. While my colleague is preparing this, there she goes already. Super visit. So let's see. Is there any interest? So I think, Alexi, you're getting a good testing population here. So is it okay if we put your name and your email and the tool link in the follow-up link? I have to ask for GDPR reasons.
Yes, sure. Of course.
Great. All right. Fine. So perfect. You see, that's is working well. 31 people want to test. Okay, I think mission accomplished. Alexi, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you, Lotte, for the quick poll. And let's move on to our last contribution from Sava. Sava, you are presenting the case study from the city of Brașov, and you will explain why it is interesting. I don't need to introduce it. The floor is yours.
Thank you. And this is, I hope the presentation will speak for herself, and look forward to have a lot of questions from you. We are speaking about the city of Brașov and the rectification of the area. I started with something about the eMob and part of the regional development agency that I represent, having in mind for fulfilling the necessary funds for city halls in the area. And this is some of our actions in the next programming period for 21-27. I'm looking only to express to that we have very conservative targets comparing with other regions with the same amount of money that we have from the European Commission. We are looking for a minimum of 150 electric buses and almost 100 miles of bicycle lanes, 20 charging stations, and 5 fully digitized mobility system in large city. The good practice, City of Brasov. We have inside the EMO project a working group, and in this working group consisting of several major cities and also medium-sized cities, discussion and projects, and with the policy instrument, the former regional operational program, and having in mind the next programming period, we fix some targets. One of the most ambitious is the Brasov, and to have a full ecological transport in the 27-28, and that means trolleybuses, buses, and a limited number of hybrid. And this is only for the city limit, because for the metropolitan area, they still will be used the diesel one. For the metropolitan train lines, that will be implemented also in this 21-27 period. They will be full electrified. Most of the lines are electrified, but where the line is not, battery operated engines are taken into consideration. And also an ambitious idea is to reinstall the tram lines inside the city. We have over 10 cities that in the last 30 years dismissed the tram system because of the cost, and some of them, including Reșița in the West region and Brasov in our central region, have in mind to reinstall. So, the good practice, 2 major lines of actions. So we are speaking about trolleybuses. We have in the left the old one, and in the right the new one. On the buses, there was first step of reducing the fleet in the mid-90s and early 2000s. So when they have in mind electrification, they already have fairly modern diesel buses, but not comparing with the new one, eBussed. So we are speaking now about the trolleybus system. We're speaking about 30 trolleybus operating in 2014 when they have in mind to redefine the system of trolleybus, and the system start to be refit in 2019. But we must understand that in 1987, at the peak of the public transport in municipality of Brasov, they have over 200 trolleybuses and almost 20 trams out of a total of 465 vehicles. Starting the renewal of the fleet, they start with large trolleybuses, 26 articulated, operational this year. And the last 25 will be ready this December, all of 80 meters. The last 25 you see are in the test procedures. The trolleybus procurement, it was 2 procurement procedures. The Polish company, the Solaris, with the electric traction system by Skoda from Czech Republic. So I'm not going inside the technical aspects, except to mention that they have an autonomy, so they could provide transportation even where they don't have the electric line. This is the city of Brasov and the main routes of trolleybus. They are transforming also some bus routes on trolleybus routes, and as I said, they could operate where is 65 catenary and 35 without the contact line. And the eBussed project. they have in mind 72 of them from different variants of financing. It was the National Fund Administration, it was the European funds, it was also in a small number the Norwegian and the Swiss funds, and also it was supported by the projects inside the community developed ideas and community budget. It started in October 2018, and next year will be the last delivery. All of the buses will be low floor, and they have an estimated, as I discussed with the head of the technical department of the transport operator, for 15 years with 2 changes of battery at each 5 years. It's a mountain area with a hill profile, so that the use of the battery will be high. They're comparing with the discussion of the cold and the heat that I heard before. They have also really cold winters. Is a mountain ski resort in the Brasov, and sometimes the summer is hot also on Brasov. So the development, another 30 for the future, another 30 buses, metropolitan train system. This is ongoing, and analyzing the tram system rebuild. I'll try to be short. So the lesson learned, the power transformer issues. Also for city with large power, because Brasov used to be the workshop of Romania. Built more than 1 million trucks and 1.5 millions of tractors in the period before 1990. So they have a major 400 kilovolts electric line, but to take the power to the charging station is it's another issue. Also having in mind the use of fast charging station in a stable way, because otherwise the time for recalibration for the cells during the night, or the life cycle of the batteries could be not what you have foreseen. Training the staff has the question that I asked, from bus drivers to tech support team and the IT specialist is a key issue. They receive in the Brasov a lot of information, and they need to process this information to make the quite good analysis, and it was a challenge. Final ideas learned during the process, capacity of IT equipment to process the data you will get from the equipment. Look forward to get as much technical support to design the whole project, and in terms of effort, when you are in the procedures of tendering, or you start to receive the merchandise, fixing the problems on the spot is quite challenging. And as also the Jeroen status in his presentation, starting small, develop later, major projects later. First-hand experience is quite as gold. And I couldn't underline more that the system for management of traffic and the fleet, including intelligence, artificial for large data or for big data processing, are very important. Thank you very much. Looking forward to answer to your question. And let's fix this to get out from stopping share. Yes, I managed. Great.
Very interesting, Saba, and 2 good practices in one city. I find it extremely interesting, the strategy to revive the existing trolleybus system and to introduce the eBuses. So how did you decide on which lines, which type of buses should run?
First of all, we must confess that from 320 cities of Romania, Brasov is in the 3 under the red line that is on the procedure of questioning from the European Commission regarding the level of pollution, especially with small particles. And they for sure start to set the new electric lines in the area that were more polluted from the motor transport, including the public transport and also the personal transport. In the future, when they start to have in Brasov also the small 8 meters and 10 meters, they are looking forward for the old city center, but the trolleybus, which large capacity because are 18 meters, are using for the residential to the business area of the city. And
Jeroen, do you have a question to Sava?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I have one question about for the trolley technique for in the long term. Do you when battery buses are becoming more popular and more improved, how do you look at that with the trolleybus infrastructure? Do you think it will replace it, or are you see that on a strategic way?
There are two major lines of thinking. One, that's saying the e-buses are the future, are the new stuff. They are not depending of catenary on this, how to say, not very nice electric lines inside the city. And this is good. Also, the e-buses are more easily to be made autonomous as the future looks to be for them. On the other side, the boys who are thinking more about the money and the maintenance said, trolleybus is the technology that you use for last 50, 60 years. It's easy to maintain, the costs are easier, and with this kind of not very nice image of the catenary could be managed. I'm not pretty sure that the trolleybus have a bright future, but for this very moment, for municipality that have in mind keeping the cost at the minimum and using the trolleybus for more than 25, 30 years. In this very moment, Bucharest have almost 30 years trolleybus in running. It's a thing. We are not having e-buses for more than 20 years still running somewhere to make a comparison, something like that. But I don't have a quite. I'm a fan of the trolleybus, but in the groups that I discuss about the future of electromobility, I'm in a slight minority. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Simon, do we have questions from the floor?
We do. Yes, we have one question coming from Blanca, which I've now lost. Oh, here it is. Okay, she's asking, what is the line range where the e-buses are used for transport? And also, how many times are the e-buses charged during the working day?
For the long distance, there is only one fast charging on the day. The other fast charging are for emergency changing of the environment or something like that. Using on the idea that the Brasov has 12 kilometers from north to south and 15 from east to west, it's easily for autonomy of 200, 250 kilometers to have the night-long general recharging for all the day. Okay. So they could to make 6 to 8 passages for all the line with the night charging. But they have for every 5 to 6 e-buses one fast charging, and for the more complicated routes they have one fast charging, but they are not fast charging from 0 to 100. They are start to fast charging when they are at 30%. And they are moving in about half an hour to 80%, because the last 20% are the most difficult to recharge, and they are not doing on the fast charging.
Okay, thank you very much. For now, from the audience, but perhaps some more questions will come in during the panel. Thanks.
Saba, but the charging, is it depot charging or is it anywhere opportunity charging along the way?
We have the normal charging during the night in the depot, and it's an issue. You have your old depot, the diesel depot. and you start as a normal house manager. I have the depot, and now we are leaving the diesel, taking the electric. Let's put the charges here. Doesn't work. At the half of the process, you understand you couldn't manage these things. You reshape all your plan. We designed the new depot, and we start to move the charger that we already put in the old depot to the new depot, and start to move the e-buses to the new depot. We are more, eco-friendly with the buses and give the necessary space and have the necessary tools for the maintenance, because you could try to manage from walking the way, but it's better to start a new thing with the new equipment. So in this very moment, we are using also the old depot and the new depot, but with the night charges, one charger for each electric bus.
Mm-hmm. I think the depot question is one that we can open to the entire group of speakers, and let's start our panel discussion with that, because I think in Utrecht you also have clear opinions of putting the e-buses into the old depot or going for a new one. Jeroen, don't you?
Yes, we have some new depots. It also has to do with urban development, and then we have to move out from our one big old depot to a new location, and then you can also make new investment also in the charging infrastructure.
Alexi, any opinions? E-buses and diesel in the same depot or separately?
In our region, the depots are owned by several private operators, so they of course prefer to use the existing infrastructure.
But we have heard from a German example where an e-bus caught fire in a depot and then all burned down very rapidly, that additional safety measures should be introduced, right?
Yeah,
yes. I can certainly comment that might of course change the situation, and it will be interesting to meet our stakeholders for the first time after that news broke.
Yeah, I would like to ask that add about that. We also have in the new depot, we have to first of all, we want to put there 180 buses, but due to fire regulations, we can only have the capacity of 140 buses, because we have to make some more room and space between the buses for fire regulations, and also bringing walls between the buses. It was also a complex location because it was next to a fuel storage, but yeah, you have to be aware of that, and electric buses are more complex.
Well, that was one of the lessons from operation. Of course, you always learn from the disasters and failures most. And they are the ones that, yes, are shared among the community of practitioners first. But in general, when you think about the first experiences from operation, what lessons have you learned for future procurement? And let's just take statements from each of you to this question. And maybe we just start in the same order as we had our presentations. So Jeroen, that would make you go first.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we have learned that we, it's said earlier also by Sava, to make small steps, but you have to start. And if you start, then you can learn and you can react, and also make bigger steps. And that makes this transition finalized, or finalized and implemented.
Yeah, okay. Alexi, you were second. Lessons from operations for future procurement.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's important to remember that failures will happen from time to time. So it's good to be prepared with sufficient number of spare vehicles and sufficient redundancy on the system level. And of course, when we think about failures, it's also important to understand the PR management, that when anything happens with eBuses, the general public will always blame it on the new technology. So that's good to keep in mind. And then maybe a specific point about the opportunity chargers, that when those are applied, the overall efficiency is highly dependent on the utilization rate of those chargers. So that should be considered when procuring buses, that there's a sufficient amount of buses per charger. Yeah.
And of course, both come from different hands, the buses and the chargers, and are procured separately. It's difficult to tune it so that it fits together in an optimal way.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a whole new optimization problem.
And I think you had points on access to data and to information from the technology provider in the procurement contracts, didn't you?
Yes, it's now in the new procurement documentation that public transport operator will have access to all of the data. But yeah, now it's possible to start utilizing it. Just how? That's a new question.
Okay. And Sava, lessons from operations for future procurement?
Have the technical support at a level that exceeds the capability of the city hall. We have on the Brasov two tendering procedures. One that Brasov is doing by themselves with the Jasper support, and when all the questions for the providers of e-buses or trolleybuses are coming, the Jaspers were taking care of them. And the second one is a common acquisition at the national level, developed by the regional Ministry for Regional Development, when they take buses and trolleybuses and tram for almost all regions, and all the questions that arrive were also answered, but at that level, also with Jasper support. Because otherwise, when you have in a tendering procedures this kind of no less than 200 kilowatts battery and no less than 321 kilometers range, they start to ask, what about 315 kilometers range, and what about 240 kilowatts battery? And when you say that the cell system battery should provide, I'll say, at least 4 areas of recharging the partial batteries, I said, why not 6 or not 8? It's quite difficult, and it's difficult at the level of the municipality to have this kind of knowledge in this very first time of electrification of e-buses. So from our experience, the technical expertise to be taken, to be invited, or to be paid to be there, it's quite important.
It's interesting.
Sorry, one comment. For the all e-buses we take also the charger from the bus company. So the bus company come with 20 buses, 20 normal charger, and 4 or 5 fast chargers to be, and also ask them to be, I'll say, general, like in the mobile phone, to have a general connection that could be used on other e-buses in event that we have other e-buses than that we bought for that to be used in that kind of charger with some adapters or something like that.
You mean compatible?
Compatible in what one level?
A standard, yes, a common standard.
It was the first charger of the Tesla that could be used only on Tesla 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, we do not want to end up like in the mobile phone and the computer world where every model has a different charger. Yes, of course. So, but this is a question of standards. You mentioned something interesting, like the possibility to procure at national level. For instance, I mean, Jeroen mentioned it, that all the Dutch cities have a strategy because it's a national strategy. So then you can procure a very big amount, or every city goes in by itself. I mean, of course, there is, I think, pro and con of each approach, but what do you think is better, to procure nationwide or in a group of cities, or every city by itself? Whoever feels like answering, just take the floor.
Well, we have a national agreement, but we don't procure the buses by ourselves. Our public transport companies that are privately, they are doing that. But sometimes, for some example, we have buses here in Utrecht, in the Utrecht region. The last they came in, but they are the same as well, in different colors, but are technically the same as they are driving in another region in the Netherlands. So then they can well, also make a profit and also share the lessons learned to other regions. So that's the model we have in the Netherlands. We have hydrogen fuel buses, and they are trying to get those because they are much more expensive. They're trying to organize that nationally, but that's also sometimes very hard because there are different time levels, and but you have to do it in not only in small amounts, because in the Netherlands the levels we have up to 200 or 400 buses. So then you have really there's not much to win in scale. We have large series, but that could be anything. Also, a different situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Okay, if the others don't want to jump in, I think another lesson from operations that is important for planners is that the time it takes is longer. I think Jeroen, you also mentioned that in your keynote, that one should allow for more time than for the simple procurement of diesel buses. So and what else? Yeah. I think foresee specific training for all the staff. That also came out in a recent matchmaking that we organized. And we had a good practice from an eBussed partner from Hamburg who reported that all the German public transport companies, so not the cities, but the ones that were actually doing the procurement, have joined like on a voluntary basis in a national knowledge exchange platform. And I think this is also very good when introducing something new, that the information is shared quickly amongst all the involved. Okay, so then let's talk further about public transport electrification. All our examples now have been related to buses or trolley buses, but I think, Sava, you mentioned the possibility to revive the trams or to develop new trams. I would like to ask, do your cities include trams in the future mobility strategy? If yes, how? And if not, why not? So how about you start this time, Sava?
Yes, I was thinking how to put the answer in a positive way. We used to have trams in the central region of Romania. In this very moment, there are no trams running. We have some hopes that trams will be re-put on lines in Brasov, maybe sometimes in the future also in Sibiu, maybe sometimes in the future in the third major city is Târgu Mureș. Otherwise, the number of the cities in the whole Romania that use the tram system decreased with almost 35% in the last 30 years. It's a problem of cost, it's a problem of what they call in the 90s and the early 2000s. The tram is disrupting the auto traffic of the private traffic. It wasn't in that period no way to somebody know about sustainable urban mobility or taking the private cars outside of the traffic. So they just put out the tram lines out of the front of the private cars, not to make them feel uncomfortable. Anyway, the future of the trams looks more positive from my point of view, as Jeroen said, than of the trolleybuses. First of all, the capacity of moving people. Jeroen said previous that with 75 meters tram with 60 kilometers per hour, you really move like a subway on the surface. It's something that offers a large capability of mobility of people, which the rest of the electric system, the buses and the trolleybus, are not quite able to match. But in this very moment, I have only hopes for the next period for the trams in the central region of Romania. Thank you.
Alexi, are there any trams in Finland apart from Helsinki?
Yeah, we have a bit similar situation than what Sava just described, that in Turku we used to have trams until early 70s when it was discontinued. And as you mentioned, there still are in Helsinki, and now there are just started operation in Tampere, this light rail type of modern tram, and similar system is being planned for Turku as well. But it has been a very, very heated topic that has really divided the decision makers for similar reasons. Some say that it's not really worth of the high price. So decision of that hasn't been made. It will be made in a couple of years, but it's been prepared, and in our case it would support the buses, the electric buses and bus trunk lines as the main trunk lines. So there would be just one or two tram lines in the future. So hopefully within 10 years we will have a modern tram line in Turku. So the supporters, they of course see many benefits. Of course, the higher capacity that buses just can't match, but also it can have a very positive impact on the land use and urban development, and especially if the route is designed so that the city owns a lot of land next to the planned route, there can be significant increase in the value of that land, and they're hoping to the tram system to pay itself back that way, that the city can sell properties next to the tram line.
Yeah, I wonder if they are also reaching out into suburban or peri-urban areas, that they would be a good way to channel commuters into the centers.
Yeah, that has been planned as well, but since the neighboring cities have not been really eager to participate the costs, so that's why it's basically inner city at the first phase. But if it's a success, then the neighboring cities are of course willing to participate, since there's a lot of commuting taking place.
Yeah, the cross-territorial dimensions, we will talk about it in our third webinar, I expect. So Jeroen, what are the perspectives of the trams in Utrecht?
First of all, we have in Utrecht in all directions a very good train system. We also use that for urban development as well. So we have invested in a lot of locations near the existing railway lines with new stations and with high frequency commuter trains, like the S-Bahn in Germany. So that's the first thing we and also we also have expanded since 1980. We have one tram line in the region we introduced, and since last year or 2 years ago, we expanded that tram line. It's to the east side of our city, where also the university is. Well, it's also it was very complex and also a very long-term project, and highly. Yeah, we only do that if you have the massive passenger flow to replace that by bus operations. We have 24-meter buses, and that and with 3 bus lanes we can also do a lot by buses, and they are much more cheaper. But there are in the future for the next 15 years or 10-15 years, we want to have 2 new bus lines, but we don't have the funding for that at this moment. So there are plans for the future.
Yeah, I guess it's always a question how many people you have to ferry around. And in the case of the Netherlands, you're right, the train system is already very dense and very developed. So the question is, where does a tram fit in?
Yeah, and it's very fitting in the infrastructure in an historic center, and that's also a very complex thing, much more complex than with a bus system.
Yes, of course, indeed. Well, we have seen in France several new tram line developments. So I don't have examples from other countries, but I think France has some big projects implemented in this area, which look very good. But I would like to hear a little bit from you how the passengers are reacting to the e-buses. Have you gathered feedback, and how is the feedback like from passengers and from the general public towards the introduction of electric buses?
Maybe I can start. So in eBussed, we actually made a small study on this in all 6 regions. And I can't exactly remember the results from other regions that well, but here in Turku, it was quite surprising how big share of the passengers didn't really know the difference between electric and diesel buses. So they just took a bus, and we're happy that it was there in time. And so that was the main takeaway, that passengers don't really care that much. But in overall, of course, they had a positive attitude towards electric buses. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same as we see in Utrecht or elsewhere in the Netherlands. New buses in general, but are highly rated for passengers' comfort. We see in the surveys, and we also it's not a big difference, but in general, people like the buses because they are more, especially they're more quiet, and in general, the contribution to sustainability and cleaner air that they like more. We get a lot of also feedback from people living next to the bus line. Some of them, if there are speed humps, then with heavier buses, then it will give easily more trouble and discomfort, and that's also sometimes we that also have to do with the if the asphalt the street is not properly maintained, then it will give more problems. So that's sometimes what should be repaired. But in general, most people, because they're more quiet, people who are living near bus stops or at the end of a bus line, they are very, they're much happier, and they sometimes let it know to us or to the public transport company.
Sava, any reactions in Romania?
It's a little bit tricky to answer, because you will see something not unusual but awkward. So the people who use the electric buses like it. Not love it, but like it. It's okay. As I said, they transfer from some fairly new diesel buses to the electric buses. So they like it. It's okay. The general public from Brașov city love it, because there is no noise, as Jeroen said. There's no pollution, and they were in a polluted city. But who really exhausted and start to cherish like a goddess all the electric buses was the people who never traveled with the electric buses from the metropolitan area, because they get the new diesel buses instead of the 70s and 80s buses, which is roasted and almost broken, that was dealing with the metropolitan routes before the electric buses come into the city, and the new diesel buses go to the metropolitan. And for them was such a change to have buses with air conditioning, with normal chairs, and with hour to come at the hour that they say they come. So they were the most happy people regarding the electrifying the Brașov, the metropolitan area from Târgu-Mureș to Săcela and all other cities. They're the most happy people. Even they're not using exactly the e-buses, but the effect, the general effect of this changing was great.
Yeah, this is an unexpected result.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, we're coming to the end of our webinar. I would like to give each of you the floor for a very short final statement, takeaway for our audience. And starting with Jeroen.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say something about it that I hope you have learned a lot about this, and that's one thing you need in this transition of e-buses. Learn from each other and make small steps, but at last one big step. And I hope to see you soon, and very good luck with the transition.
Thank you, Jeroen. Alexi.
Yeah, I'd like to close with that it's important to remember that introducing e-buses is not just a drop-in solution of new technology. So it's a holistic change of the infrastructure, of the business models, of everything, and to control that, we need to really cooperate, team up, and learn from each other.
Thank you, Sava.
Thank you very much, all of you, for all the presentation that helped me to understand more things, and for the questions are coming from our audience. For sure, I will take the Alex tool and send to all my small city who have in mind the electric bus system to fulfill the tool and to see, are you ready? I'm not ready. If you are not ready, what to do for you to be ready? If we start to take the buses and that to figure out what to do with them, is not the good approach, especially where the municipality is not so large to adapt very fast. Thank you very much again for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Brașov City.
Thank you all for your contributions. It was very interesting. I hope the audience enjoyed it as well. So a lot of takeaways. We will write these up in a follow-up note. We will put it on the website. You will get it automatically in your emails, along with the recordings and all the presentations that you've seen today. And my colleague has already shared in the chat the links to sign up for next week and the week after. Next week, we talk about charging infrastructure. And please don't forget to take the short evaluation survey. We need it for our hierarchy to know how we're doing. And if you have any suggestions on other topics or other formats, please write them in the survey. We're always happy to take up suggestions from our audience. And with that, I would also like to thank my colleagues Simon and Lotte, and wish you all an excellent afternoon. And of course, we haven't solved the question of where is all the electricity going to come from, but this is for another discussion. All right, goodbye.